My name is Graham Virtue. I'm a journalist based in Glasgow. I've been honoured to host this Q&A with the directors of American, the Bill Hicks story. They're here tonight. If you'd like to welcome them, please. They're Paul Thomas and Matt Harlock. Okay, we really want to open up to the floor and get some questions from you guys, but I might start off, if it's okay. Paul and Matt, if I could just ask you to identify who's who.
Yeah, I'm Paul.
Paul.
That makes me Matt, I think.
Yeah. And as you can tell, you're British. So I was wondering, why are two Britons making a documentary about an American stand-up comedian?
Well, the story starts with you, really, doesn't it?
Well, I guess the fairly well-known sort of fact is that Bill was always, recognised more in the UK than he was in the States. So there was always an interest from many people in the UK. He was someone I'd been a fan of, and I've been doing some TV stuff. I'd had some contact with Bill's family because of some events that we'd been doing in the UK, and then kind of thought, well, maybe there was something that could be done in terms of all this rare footage that seemed to be out there, which hadn't been broadcast or hadn't been seen. So we kind of cooked up a dastardly plan, and it was something that we took in different routes to try and get commissioned, and various blind alleys were explored, and in the end it ended up being what you've just seen. So it was a British production, I guess, just because there was always an impetus from the UK, and one of the jobs we are trying to do is to sort of get it out to the States. Obviously that's where we need to get Bill's message out.
But in terms of some of his kind of most famous routines, how did you strike a balance between, we kind of want to get this in because the fans want it, but at the same time, maybe it takes too long?
It's all related to the story. So, I mean, the first 20 minutes really establishes who this kid was, and you're not seeing any footage, so you have to, just from what people are saying, you have to kind of establish his character. Then the footage is always, it's trying to reflect what he's going through at the time. I mean, he did some very, very advanced stuff early on. But there's an arc within the film that you kind of see him progressing. So that takes a bit of crafting, that you see him evolve, even though he was doing some material here, actually doing it several years earlier.
I mean, how much footage did you actually have to go through, and how did you choose what made it into the final film compared to what you had to leave out?
Well over 100 hours of original archive, and we had 120 hours of our own interviews to put together, 1,500 photographs. I mean, the edit started, the first edit was 3.5 hours, and that took 3 months to get to, just combining all of that. And then it's just a case of working and working and working and whittling it and changing the shape.
So there was a point at which we had a 2-hour, 20-minute version, which we just thought, we can't get it any shorter than that. There's no way. I mean, we can't take this out, and that has to stay. And then obviously you start putting it in front of audiences and realise, they don't need that bit. So it's kind of mutated quite a lot over the last sort of 6-7 months, and it's been a very interesting process. There's still parts that you kind of, from a historical, factual sort of basis, you wish were still in. So Bill used to put jokes under his big brother's door when he was about 8 or 9 years old, and his brother would mark them and give them back. And it's just such a nice story, and so indicative of how young Bill was when he knew what he wanted to do, and that sense of purpose. But it just you couldn't keep it in time-wise.
You have to keep it moving and get the story forward.
And there's tons of things like that, so buy the DVD, it'll all be on the extras.
Well, I want to throw it out to the crowd. If you do have a question, please put your hand up in the air. We've got some folk with mics going around, so we'll try and get around everyone.
Hi, I thought you did a really good job of bringing those photographs to life. That was just, felt like something really fresh and new, and you really explored his relationships with his male friends and with his family. I just wondered if you took a deliberate decision not to explore female relationships.
No, we obviously started out, trying to interview everybody. I mean, so for instance, Dwight Slade, his closest friend, only said yes once we were flying to America. So we changed our flights once we were there. His first girlfriend is remarried, has changed her name. When he went to New York, he was actually with a woman called Pamela, who died not long after Bill, so she wasn't available. And later on, he was with someone else, and she's now married as well. So it's a case of those people weren't available, and no one else was. Everything you see in the film was a first-hand account by someone who was there at that place. And people just weren't happy talking about his relationships in situations where they hadn't been there. So we've literally got a few lines in the entire 120 hours of interviews. So it's something that it just wasn't possible to do without the first-hand sources and with other people just not comfortable, talking on either person's behalf. But what I mean, he had long, deep relationships with I don't know, 4 or 5 people. Very intense, and maybe it's that, each one was the love of his life, and maybe that's why people just weren't happy just, chatting about it, because each one meant a lot to him. But yeah, it's something that it's just, we just couldn't find a way to do it. But
I think the thing is that we've kind of hamstrung, we were hamstrung by the depth of the other relationships that were included in the film, because there's been another and 2, I guess, documentaries about Bill before, one not been shown here, where you would never even dream of going, where's his girlfriends? Because they just focus on, here's the clips of him doing his stand-up. So because obviously the relationships are in there, the friendships and the family, you kind of wonder, as you have, where are the girls? But it's something, we didn't choose.
Because all of those people, no one's actually really talking about themselves, and yet you feel like you know those 10 people now. But all the time they're just talking about Bill, and yeah, Matt's right. It's a case of, and because you feel that, you think, well, hold on, where's this other side? And it's just,
When did you first come across Bill Hicks yourself?
Never did see him, unfortunately. But it was just someone that I think, we both realised was somebody who was culturally important, but who had not been given that significance in terms of the cultural timeline. In the UK, you can, sort of throw a pint in a student union and you'll hit 10 fans, but in other countries and in the States particularly, it's not like that. So I think that we always thought that he was someone who was significant, and what we're really attempting to try and do is to try and get this film out in the States. So Paul mentioned we're going to be at South by Southwest in about 3.5 weeks' time, which is not Bill's hometown, but he's got a massive following there. And I think that what we're really trying to do is to give the person that we feel had a lot of valid things to say about the world and the way it works, the chance to do that on a wider scale. So that was kind of the impetus for wanting to do the film, I think, which was that he's a...
Yeah, I mean, that's right, actually, to sort of carry on his job of he was trying to reach as many people in the world as he could, and that's kind of the role we took on, was to extend that by making the most powerful film we could. And in America, so few people have heard of him. You just get blank faces, and it's just astonishing, because he should be one of their cultural, cornerstones, and he's just not. And so that's kind of the job of the film, is to put him back in his rightful place on the map.
OK, well, that's all we've got time for, I'm afraid. But if you'd like to thank Paul Thomas and Matt Harlock.